I think this is working. I am trying this, and there's not a conversation going on in the Bridges of Meaning Discord server right now, so I wondered if I just popped on, if anybody else would pop in. We will see. Just finished making a I haven't made the thumbnail for it, making a video on continuing to think about the video that I released this morning. I can pull up the Substack. And continuing to think about this in terms of, as is almost always the case, my thoughts continue to develop as I make a video on Friday, and then Monday morning I think about the video I made and have additional ideas, and they continue to develop. So I wrote this morning, and just made another video about it, about basically church leadership of the American church. It's interesting to see what will happen. Oh, look. I am not alone. I wondered how alone I would be. Let me turn on my camera. How are you guys doing?
Good.
I just made a video that I can't wait to hear what you think of it, Jacob, because I was reading I did that thing on Doug Wilson and these Reformed Reconstructionists, and they're what do you know about these Reformed Reconstructionists, Jacob?
Reformed Reconstructionist Jews, are you talking about?
They're not Jews. It's Doug Wilson, Moscow, Idaho. They very much believe that if you follow the plan of God, you will receive the reward for that plan of God, but they're Reformed Protestants.
So they believe God is a divine vending machine.
There's some of that to them, yes, in a big way. So,
yeah, that's what prosperity gospel is. The idea that you are going to do, that when you give God what He wants, He'll give you what you want. It's pure idolatry as far as I'm concerned.
Okay. I'll be anxious to hear what you think about the video tomorrow, because it's interesting stuff. How are you, Mark?
I'm doing okay. I thought it was Monday. How are you doing a live stream on Monday? Monday is usually your day when you're recovering from Sunday and you're
it is. There's the masked man. I didn't go for a walk this morning because it was raining, and then I did a few things around the house, and then the video I had to make today just only lasted 45 minutes, and so I have a little bit of time this afternoon, so I thought I'll pop in and see who wants to chat. And you guys did not disappoint.
Video?
What's that?
You did a 45-minute video?
Yeah, only 45 minutes.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
Part of what bloats videos is if you do a commentary. That commentaries are long videos to make. It just takes time.
Oh, I thought Mark was making fun of the fact you haven't been dropping long videos recently. You haven't been dropping videos much at all recently.
See?
That's my criticism.
See?
Are we live right now?
If I drop these short little less than an hour videos, some people are like, others are like,
less than 2 hours, it's not a real video.
Bless your heart, Jacob. Bless your heart.
I can't listen to ADHD man that long. It's fine if someone else is there to steer the ship in a good direction, but if he's just going off by himself, it's like he's going to go here and there, and I'm going to be like taking notes and trying to keep track, and then I'm not going to remember what the video was about because it was about 10 things. No.
See, that's the thing. Until about into 2 or 3 hours into it, that's when you start actually getting into the meat of the matter. Like the rest of it, it's just background.
I think that's true. And I just haven't had time for a lot of long videos lately. I mean, I've
noticed.
I have a list. I go to the list. I go, do I know about this enough yet? And if the answer is yes, I set up the lights, I tune the stuff, I get the software rolling, I write on the board, and I just go, and I get a nice little 30, 15 minute, I've even got a 10-minute video. I don't know what's wrong with you guys. I'm just saying.
What's the point of a 10-minute video?
I have a bunch of them right now.
Well, yours, no, but the thing is, Chad, yours are funny. There's a difference between a high production value, pithy thing that, and you make fun of that, but your videos are really high production value. Like when I first talked to you and you're like, and I expected you to have had professional video making experience because your videos are very, very high production value. The type of thing I would love to see people in our corner do more of. Like my idea, we talked about Paul, but yeah, there's a big difference between those and actually the exploratory, bubbling up things that Paul does. Those are completely different.
I agree with that. I watch a lot of his ADHD videos. I quite enjoy them, but he does his best work, honestly, when he's focused in on his own ideas and he's already filtered through all that stuff and he goes in for like the 35-minute kill. And that's when you get the really good stuff, right? I mean,
so you like his sermons?
No, I don't like his sermons.
But that's exactly what his sermons are. That's when he's actually like
except they've got all this religious reference and theology in them that I don't understand. So no, I don't like the stuff I don't
really
understand.
got, other than Jacob. Only Jacob really understands it. Hey, are we?
Yeah,
we are live.
We are live.
Okay.
I think. I haven't looked.
Yeah. That's
I just
why
thought
I came on the
you
phone
weird.
went off.
Okay, Paul, I'm going to hijack your stream because I found out about something just a couple of days ago, which it's been bubbling in my mind. And
Hijack away, Jacob.
So, what's happened with Reform and Conservative Judaism, which are still the two largest denominations in Judaism, is they are having trouble finding people willing to enroll in their seminaries. They are not able to ordain enough rabbis. Their pulpits are going empty, and these are high-paying pulpits, right? Like these are congregations with people, high-paying pulpits, and they just can't find people who are willing to go to their seminary.
That's interesting. Now, again, we got to do a little translation here because most Protestants, when they hear Reformed and Conservative, they're thinking one thing, but for the Jewish context, this
is like saying the main line, I guess.
Right. Yes.
Yeah, these are the leftists. These are the progressives, the ones that started ordaining women and now are having gay clergy. And really, from what I have been able to see, this is a crisis of authenticity because people are no longer willing to be the pretend rabbis. And I call them rabbits. These pretend rabbits, which they dress themselves up in Judaism, but and so Max posted this video from his rabbi talking to who came from the conservative JTS and who was talking to a reform rabbi talking from HUC, and the one thing the two of them agreed on was at least 90% of their classmates did not believe in God.
Wow.
Yeah, and so it's a crisis in authenticity as far as I see it, because people are no longer willing to. So another thing I call them like drag queens, right? When you see a drag queen, you know this is a man dressed up as a woman,
right?
It's very obvious that this is somebody putting on femininity as a costume, and that's really what Reform and Conservative Judaism are. It's an atheist putting on Judaism as a costume, as a garish, and they're always the most garish. Like you'll see that what they put on is the most garish, like the women wearing tefillin. It's obvious mockery of I would say Judaism. I'm guessing they would disagree, but they can't find students. I just found out about this.
This is interesting because it's sort of the reverse of liberal Protestantism, where the churches are empty and there's all sorts of people who want to become clergy in those churches, and they don't have any trouble finding people, but the churches are just going away. So are these liberal synagogues flourishing?
Well, I'm not sure I would say flourishing. The people who go to them tend to be, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur people who go twice a year, and they want a synagogue for their kids to have a bar mitzvah at, and so they do plenty of weddings and synagogue and bar mitzvahs and funerals and circumcisions, but it's not when, for example, David Wolpe's synagogue, which yay, he threw my sister out of the synagogue. I'm so glad.
Who's David Wolpe, and why did he throw your sister out of the synagogue, and how does that interact with this?
You know David Wolpe. He's very popular in our corner of the internet. He did debates with Sam Harris. He was recently on Lex Friedman.
Oh, I didn't see that. I don't know who he is. He does film or something. He's in the film industry.
Oh no! He's a rabbi. He's
a rabbi.
Yeah, well, he's a rabbit. He's also the rabbit of the largest synagogue in Los Angeles, probably one of the largest.
So describe for me his synagogue. What is that about? Because this seems to be where establishing Protestantism is going through the floor, but not the largest synagogue in Los Angeles, huh?
So, okay, his synagogue is on the corner of Beverly Glen and Wilshire Boulevard, which really, I mean, this is the prime real estate at the center of Los Angeles, right? Hundreds of thousands of people drive past that corner on a daily basis, right? And every time I drive back past it, so right at the corner, it has in large Hebrew letters, Lador Vador, from generation to generation, which is a motto within Judaism.
Yeah.
And every time I drive past it, my blood boils, because the one thing that doesn't happen at that synagogue is Lador Vador, from generation to generation, because they are an exit ramp on the freeway that is Judaism, because, there's nobody there who's a third generation person there. Very few, right?
So is it like a mega church, but for the Jewish? It's like a mega church?
Kind of, yeah. It is kind of a Jewish mega church, except if you go there on a typical Saturday, you're gonna see maybe 100 people at the synagogue.
Yeah, it's mainline.
And those 100 people are all there for the 3 bar mitzvahs that they have every week, because they're, that's what people join Sinai for. They have a school, Sinai Academy. I mean, it's a very expensive private school up to 8th grade, but people go there because they want their kids, or they want to have a wedding in one of the nicest synagogues in the city. But that's all people go there for, is life cycle events that happen 1 or 2 or 3 times in their life, or they go for high holidays.
So it's a service vendor, not a community. And that's your complaint. If it were a community, the words on the above the door would make sense. But instead, it's just a service vendor. And yeah, I mean, I love I'm still in your vending machine analogy, Jacob. It's so excellent. Right?
Well, it's a service vendor for a community that doesn't meet weekly, and it's providing a service in some ways parallel to what Costco is providing in a different kind of community. It's a religious service provider. But you've got a particular, and I think it probably works to a degree because the Jews are a self-conscious minority. And so, correct me if I'm wrong, within that community, it's like we have to keep us together, but us involves certain ceremonies and rituals around the identity. And the part of the problem with Protestants is that, at least in the post-WASPy America, I mean, waspiness was what establishment Protestant churches were about.
And it's a dating service.
It's a dating service.
How much
there?
What's that, Chad?
How much does a wedding cost there?
I'm not sure, but having David Wolpe himself be the officiant at your wedding, it costs more than a car, that's for sure.
Okay.
Well, and a lot of cathedral establishment Protestant churches are basically the same thing. They'll have a high-profile, beautiful building at the center of the city, and you can get married there. You can have ceremonies there. I mean, people do not line up out the door to have ceremonies at Living Stones. I mean, I'm just saying, stepping over the homeless dude in your wedding gown, not every girl's dream.
Having your kids bar mitzvah at Sinai is a huge deal, which is why they have 3 bar mitzvahs every single week, at least.
Wow. Yeah. My wife had a kid in her class, her last class. He had his bar mitzvah, and he invited his teacher, and so his teacher's husband went, and we had an absolute lovely time, and it was fascinating for me just watching the cultural, religious layers. Just it's fascinating stuff.
But it really is amazing to me that they're imploding like that. Like, they're apparently HUC, so they have 3 campuses. They're thinking of closing 2 of their campuses.
The HUC?
Hebrew Union College. It's the Reform Seminary.
Okay. Wow. So they just can't get students.
Yep, and Ziegler, which is conservative has 2 seminaries, JTS in New York, Ziegler here in Los Angeles. They've slashed their tuition to almost nothing for the rabbinical school because they can't get enough rabbis to fill the pulpits.
Yeah. See, I think in Protestant circles, there's a weird dynamic between progressive Protestants and then evangelicals that, in many ways, the fishing pond of progressives are the evangelicals. That's where they're drawing all of their leadership from. Post-evangelicals, people who used to, and so then they still have a relationship with the faith. But I don't know that mainline Protestants do hardly any evangelism at all. They just basically feed off the conservative communities.
That's funny because as far as congregants, I think that's what Reform and Conservative get a lot of people who were raised Orthodox or Orthodox-ish.
Yeah.
And many years ago, 60, 70 years ago, it was actually somewhat common for them to kind of poach their rabbinate out of Orthodoxy, right? Some of the most prominent Orthodox rabbis, Aryeh Kaplan, for example, he translated a lot of texts. I mean, if you're reading basic texts in Judaism in English, Aryeh Kaplan probably translated at least some of them. He was actually the rabbi of a conservative synagogue. orthodoxy, as it's coming more and more into its own, has become less and less willing to allow people to, if you take a conservative, certainly a reform pulpit, now they're like, no, you're out of the club. You can't do this. And so I think that is a tiny part of it, but 20, 30 years ago, I mean, I remember, when I saw this news, and it's all over the Jewish press, and some of them are attributing it to COVID, but when I look at it, this has been going on before COVID. But apparently, conservative suspended its rules for this coming year, that you have to get somebody from a conservative seminary as a rabbi. They're allowing you to hire from other seminaries because there aren't enough candidates.
Wow.
And these are high-paying positions.
Yeah.
So do you think, like, the more that they capitulate and move kind of the goalpost on their rigid stance, the less people are willing to stick with it? Is that what you're saying?
Oh, you mean as far as no? I really think it's a matter of authenticity. Somebody like David Wolpe feels comfortable dressing in the garb of Judaism when he's really, I would call him an atheist, right? There's apparently this clip of where he was debating with Sam Harris. And Sam Harris keeps on bringing this up. He's debating with David Wolpe, and he says, well, when you believe in an agentic God, and Wolpe's answer is, what makes you think I believe in an agentic God?
Yes.
Right.
So why did he debate Sam Harris? What were they going to talk about?
So this is Wolpe's thing. He talks about his deeper faith. I call it a 6 feet deep faith he has. He was on the front page of the LA Times about 20 years ago, and the New York Times, I think it made, when he gave his Passover sermon was about how the Jews were never in Egypt, and it's not true. And he believes in Judaism, even though he knows that the Jews there never was an exodus in Egypt. He's I guess you could call him postmodern.
Yeah.
No, these people. I mean, a lot of the congregants in conservative and reform synagogues get offended when I say things like 90% of these rabbits don't believe in God. They really don't. And what's changed, I think, is people no longer feel that it's justified. They don't feel comfortable fulfilling the position that David Wolpe does, which is he feels like, oh, I'm smarter than my congregants. I have to lead them. So I will tell them things. And if you watch his interview with Dave Rubin from years ago, when he talks about when he started doing gay weddings, right? For me, it was enraging, as almost everything David Wolpe says is, because his whole thing was, yeah, I had to ease my congregants into understanding that we don't really actually believe in the Torah, basically.
So then you just gotta wonder, and that's, we see this again in Protestant congregations, probably true of Catholic and other groups, where there's this, it's the mission of this certain group of people to basically take people out of the faith, but they're standing within.
They're drag queens. That's what they are. They're drag queens.
So you're saying that you see the numbers are dwindling? Is that what you're saying?
The numbers of people willing to be rabbis is dwindling.
Yeah.
How about the numbers of congregants?
I don't think it's changed dramatically. And this is part of what makes me, I mean, when I first read it, I was like, a miracle, right? I kind of have always hoped for reform and conservative to go away, but not in a way that like I don't want to see all these communities destroyed, but I would like to see that these communities come back to actual Judaism, which includes a belief in God and at least having your rabbis believe in God, right? And that's what's happening because I really think it's authenticity. I really think it's people who have more ethics than somebody like David Wolpe.
So what did
And
he
yes,
talk to
I
Lex
know.
Fridman about? I mean, why does Lex Fridman have a guy like that on his channel? Because to me, it's like, I mean,
Eric also had him on his channel.
okay, I did listen to that one, and I thought I was listening. I was thinking, why would I listen to this guy? And then I stopped.
Glad to hear it. And yes, David Wolpe is my nemesis. People listen to him because for the people who want to believe in an Irenic God and only an Irenic God, and the fact is, look, I don't think you can be a reasonable person who doesn't believe in an Irenic Jewish God, right? The Irenic Jewish God is just plain, look, if you believe in reality, you believe in an Irenic Jewish God, right?
Yep.
And for those people, David Wolpe is the perfect rabbit.
So he's creation. So he's admitting that much. But see, that's way too far for some people.
Creation, kind of like he believes that there is such a thing as a summum bonum, right? You have to believe that there is a uncaused cause or something, or you have to believe that there is a reality. So the type of God that Eric Weinstein believes in is the type of God that David Wolpe believes in, right? The type of God you get to from Jordan Peterson, but it's not an agentic God.
I think rabbit is not a good name for it because rabbits multiply, and you're saying that they're not.
Okay, yeah, you have to understand part of the reason I say rabbit is because you could argue in Hebrew that rabbit is the feminine form of rabbi, and yeah.
Jacob's throwing shade with the Hebrew.
John Molan here. I think I have a relevant comment. I recently watched a lecture by YouTube pastor Mike Winger. You might know him, and he had a very relevant conversation about the progressive church. And he was bringing up basically the point that the progressive church was using Jesus as a gateway drug to atheism. And that was incredibly illuminating, and it's very relevant to your recent, when you went through Carl Trueman's book on personality and Jean-Jacques Rousseau, because basically progressive Christianity is an outgrowth of Rousseauian thought. And he was saying that these progressive pastors were using Jesus as a puppet from which you can it's your personal talking bubble that allowed you to speak yourself out of faith and out of Christianity. And that was very, very on topic in relation to what you guys were talking about in what's going on in Judaism. So I think that there's something going on that's broader. It's not just in Christianity, it's in Judaism and in everywhere. And at some point, I actually got the impression that you can just summarize progressive Christianity as a form of Satanism. Because in one of these progressive leaders were saying basically that Adam and Eve did the right thing when they were sort of chewing the apple. So that's like taken straight out of Gnosticism. So very scary stuff.
Interesting.
Yeah, I've got that one queued up, John. I haven't. I was going to do that today, but I had to have a nap, so I didn't get to it yet. It's interesting. This authenticity thing came up. I did a clubhouse room with Manuel. We do them on Mondays at noon Eastern here, and we were talking about authenticity in respect to the intimacy crisis, right? Because you need to be intimate with yourself to be authentic. And I do have to object to John's statement of Rousseauian thought, because I didn't see any thought in Rousseau. I don't know where you get that from. Just yeah. I mean, it was so obviously dumb that I was like, well, really? People listen? It's kind of obviously not. You know, and I think, Paul, you did a good job with that video pointing out it's a theory. What's a theory? A theory isn't real. It's a thought that somebody has.
Yeah. My comment on Paul's video was, you spend too much time giving credit to stupid ideas. Just call them stupid and move on. No, we really have to do this. We have to be dismissive. Like I have every time I talk about the Black Hebrew Israelites on my channel, I actually get Black Hebrew Israelites on my channel spouting absolute stupidity, and I just insult them, because that's all you can and should do for something that's that stupid. I'm sorry.
Jacob, I have to disagree. I think what Paul is doing is right, and for this following reason. If Jean-Jacques Rousseau was all alone in his little rabbit hole talking about these personality things, then I would agree it's stupid. When the whole world believes him and follows him, something else is going on. That's spiritual. That's something else.
Well, without knowing it.
But to what extent? See, this is what I've realized to my great shock. When you have a debate, the majority of the people who listen to the debate are triangulating, because they are not actually evaluating the thoughts. They are triangulating between, okay, I have two experts. These are two smart people. I am going to see where they agree, and that's definitely true. And where they disagree, the truth must be somewhere in between,
in the middle,
right? And when you this is what the postmodernists have right about platforming, right? When you do a debate and you platform an idea, there is at least a third of your audience, at the very least. And what's been absolutely depressing is, I would say 80% of your audience are not actually evaluating the thoughts and going, this is right, this is wrong. They are triangulating. They're saying, these are the goalposts of rational debate. Let me stay in the middle, and the middle path is the correct way to go.
Right, to avoid conflict, right? Because conflict is the only sin in the atheist landscape. And what is conflict? Conflict is the thing that's inevitable, that always happens. That's what intimacy is. You don't resolve conflict. You accept conflict, because you just move it around. You can make all these trade-offs. So that's why the intimacy crisis video is so important, in my opinion. Not just because I'm the person in the video with Andrew with the bangs, but because we're talking about that in the Clubhouse talk that I posted too on BOM in the promos channel there. Same thing. It was 2 weeks in a row. We were talking about intimacy and conflict, and the fact that you can't get around conflict. So you need to accept the choices that you make, rather than trying to avoid conflict by sitting in the middle of something that has no middle. And that's where this middle out thinking stuff comes in too. It's all kind of wrapped together. It's very pernicious the way it's played out. And I was listening to Break the Rules, mainly because Catherine Brodsky was on there, and I really like Catherine. She's an interesting person. And they brought up the word intimacy. They brought up Gnosticism. They brought, like, all the terms you would hear here, they brought up, one-offs. And they're talking about film and culture. They talked about novelty. They did I don't know that they did the member berries thing, but they did the member thing. I assume they were copying something. All of that is in that video. That video has nothing to do with religion. right? It has nothing to do with anything except film, and if you get film industry people there. So it's interesting. It's creeping through everything. These themes are creeping everywhere.
So I have a question. I was been thinking a lot about this, about how, so the idea that the Peterson idea, where he doesn't believe that even atheists are exactly atheists, that they're probably religious in their atheism or whatever. And I was thinking about what happens when, like, say, a Christian deconstructs their way out of Christianity, and then they move into whatever space it is they move into, probably something like the culture, or something of that sort. What happens when you deconstruct out of that? And then, like, where does it stop? Because, I don't know, it's been on my mind lately. And I feel like this has something to do with kind of like the culture's madness right now, is it's deconstructing itself, because it can't seem to, I don't know, provide what it thinks it should be able to provide, its own values. And they can't seem to agree on anything. And I don't know. I haven't been able to formulate this question very well, but it's been on my mind. It's something to do too with that video you posted today with these aggregators, when they started talking about creating, well, what do we do to create this, like, religion or something like a religion? It's like, you guys, it doesn't, like,
It's not how religion happens.
Right.
I'm going to let Paul answer this because I want to hear Paul's answer to this, but I would say the answer is nihilism.
Yeah.
Right. And how do you deconstruct out of nihilism?
Well, people leaving nihilism because it cannot be lived within is exactly what this little community has come from, because people lived in nihilism and it was like, you can't do it. You can't do it. And so then you go back looking for somebody's crunchy religion, and the crunchier, the better. So it's going to be a hardcore orthodoxy or Calvinism or Judaism. It's going to be something that has depth and meaning, and it's also going to have bite. But
Paul,
yes,
isn't Calvinism just nihilism?
No.
Oh, here we go again.
I was thinking about, like, you know how Nietzsche talked about, whatever, we killed God and there's not enough water to wash away the blood and all this stuff. And then I was thinking, well, yeah, then if you killed God, then this modernism started to step in as the God. Modernity, the materialism, and the idea that we could create our own destinies and things like this started to step in as the religion, as the God. And then it's like, now they're back to, oh, we killed God, and now there's not enough, water to wash away the blood of this killing our, culture. Is, I don't know.
Well,
ask.
Yeah, they went to the bottom, right? And they see the abyss, and then, like, oh no, that's way worse than, we need to never come back to the abyss ever. And then they go too far in the other direction, Paul, to your point. And that's the problem with postmodernism. Like, postmodern deconstruction is only deconstruction. It can't build anything. And so once you step in that hole, you're done. That's why I tell people, no. The way out of postmodernism, like, the movie War Games had it right, right? A strange game. The only way to win is not to play. Just don't play postmodern deconstruction, and then the problem doesn't appear.
That's a sign that you can actually probably control that, and I don't know if you can.
Well, see, the reason people play postmodern deconstruction, I think, is because of the pluralism that we live within now.
The conflict.
And
they don't want the conflict.
Yeah, well, right. And so you have this pervasive pluralism, so that leads to this skepticism. And I think that's part of what we're trying to sort through. And the turn to modernism was an attempt to address that by saying, okay, we can't agree on the upper register, so we're going to just keep things down here at the lower register, the physical layer, and we will build our ontology from the ground up from the physical layer. And that can't be done either.
Right.
So
the bottom line is you can't hide from the abyss, because really the ultimate abyss, in my estimation, would be God. Because you look hard enough and it's like, holy shit. Like, you know what I mean? Like, because even the so-called abyss that stares back is terrified by the ultimate abyss.
The abyss is what the tree of life grows out of. And the abyss is what I'm talking about when I'm trying to perpetuate the idea of the gray testimony and reintegrating the gray testimonies into the church, because everybody without them, or that can't have a place to put them, you can't grow the big trees that aren't growing out of the abyss. Like, the little trees get swept away when hardship hits, and the trees that have grown out of the abyss won't. Anyway, this is a lot of visual imagery, but it's part of it.
Define gray testimony for me.
Trauma. She's talking about trauma.
I'm using gray testimony as a term for all the testimonies that aren't the testimonies that end in "and then we lived happily ever after." And that the church is uncomfortable with. So if you did shrooms and saw Jesus and that's your testimony, that's a gray testimony. If you were saved when you were 4 and now you don't know where you're at, and then you were saved several more times in high school and then you don't know where you're at, that's a gray testimony. If you got hit by a bus and then decided you were a shaman, and then also Christ is part of that, that's a gray testimony. It's a testimony of your real life broken. And it's just not the one that people mean when they say, please share your testimony. They don't tell you you can't say it, but it's not what they're looking for. But I think those are the ones, that's the separation I see in a lot of mainstream Protestantism anyway, is there's not the integration of the testimonies that aren't "and then we lived happily ever after."
So what I would say is those are the stories from the Old Testament that Protestants don't talk about.
Well, it's too big. I think that those testimonies are too jarring for a large group, and they need to be done in a smaller group. And actually, what I've been seeing on Bridges of Meaning lately is at night, that's what's going on. Like, people are coming in and talking about their great testimonies about whatever trauma they had in the church, and it's working. Like, it's really bonding them together. But I think you can't tell that to a much larger group. I mean, we got
I think you can, because enough of these people haven't really been to an AA meeting, and that AA meetings are full of great testimony.
Right.
Love them. We actually learned to laugh at them, because it's like, oh, there's so much identification. I mean, you can't be afraid. Well, I don't know. I can't speak for the church because I don't want to be the asshole that destroys the church. But, like, there's so much to identify with in somebody's character aspects.
The struggle, Chad, because I'm trying to figure out, how do I reintegrate myself without accidentally fracturing the ever fracturable Protestantism? And it's like, I don't want to. So what do?
You need a small group. You need people who are ready to hear that. And maybe Sunday testimony is not the time to give great testimony. Like, maybe because you're there at the exalted time doing the exalted thing in the exalted tradition, that's not the time for the great testimony. And you need something more like an estuary, or more like late night BOM, which is a totally different discourse here from my perspective, at least sometimes, not all the time. Yeah. Last week was amazing. Just popping in and listening to people they're just blurting out this trauma story with the church. And some people I know pretty well, and I was like, oh, really? That happened to you? Like, what? I didn't hear this story before? How interesting.
Maybe more just need to pull a Will Smith on everybody. That's all. You just say, here's my testimony. And then, you let it out, and then, well, God should be able to handle this. But, like, that's the one thing I thought was good about that whole Will Smith thing. It's like, maybe it wasn't such a bad thing that he did what he did. I mean, maybe so many people won't be so cavalier with talking shit. I don't know.
I really think this is about including your entire Bible, including the Book of Lamentations, including Ecclesiastes, including the whole life of David, including all the parts of the Bible that nobody ever wants to talk about.
Well, I think you're right. And I think part of, see, this is where the storytelling part comes into the culture, because there are, I mean, the only movies that have great testimonies nobody goes to because they're the art house films that a certain group feels esoteric and advanced because they feel a certain ennui about life. You know, they're just like slurping up their existentialism with a spoon and enjoying it, which is different from doing what you see, what Job wants to do, and his friends are unwilling to do with him.
Are you saying that artists suffer from melancholia, Paul?
If we didn't have melancholia, we wouldn't have artists.
And that's the truth.
It's where it all comes out of.
Well, it's interesting too, and I think Peterson sort of touches on this, although maybe he doesn't go far enough, right? That, you know, the real hero and critical drinker, as you know, Paul, really nails this. The real hero goes through some ups and downs, right?
Well, and so this is where, you know, this is where I really appreciate Jacob, because I mean the Hebrew canon just sort of leaves it there, and of course the Christians come along and end with the Book of Revelation, nicely resolves the story with a U-shaped structure. And they're the Jews kind of in the middle in their ennui. You know, God chose us to suffer. Oh,
But it's not just that. I think part of the problem, and I'm gonna do it, is Jesus, because Jesus is God, and Jesus' story is the perfect story, and you Christologically read the entire Old Testament, and you destroy the Bible with that type of idolatry.
Oh,
Well, I'll tell you what, listening to you talk with Chris Petkow damn near deconstructed my ass.
who?
Because
Jacob?
like that was, what's that? Yeah,
Jacob talking to Chris? Okay.
Man, that scared me, because by the end of that I was like, I don't know what the hell to believe in.
Time to ban Jacob. Here we go. Where's my button? What button can I press? Kick
I'm
Jacob.
sorry, I turned Jesus back into a human. I anti-divinize Jesus. This is who I am.
It wasn't that as much as it was the David Ben or whatever the hell it was, but whatever it was.
His.
Yeah, so
Yosef and
that
Yosef?
had felt what deconstruction felt like, and let me tell you, that shit ain't fun, dude. Because I was like, dude, now what? And really, at the end of it, I found that I'm just, again, at the end of it, I found that I'm just making excuses so I don't have to be submitting to something greater than myself. That's at the end of it. That's what I came to. But so thanks for.
Thanks, Jacob. He's going to be drinking before you know it. It's all be your fault.
No. There's realizing that Jesus is a human being shouldn't lead you to drink.
The church says he's a human being.
But then you have to actually believe it, because there's no such thing as fully human and fully God. There's no such thing.
Church says
You
there
can't have
is.
somebody be 100% human and 100% God. It just doesn't work.
That's what the church fathers wrestled with.
Wait.
And they were wrong.
Jed, if you drink because of Jacob, you make sure you call Jacob during that time. I'm just saying.
Drunk dial Jacob.
My cell phone number is freely available. You can find it. Just Google Jacob Federici. It's right there. Text me, call me. Nobody cares. My phone is not ringing, so.
If I drank, it would be from something. It would be from me falling asleep about 6 months ago. So I'm okay. I'm on safe ground. See, that was also the benefit of actually being an alcoholic. It gave me the ability to wrestle with whatever God seems to be. Being that I called God just God forever, I didn't really, whatever, it's God. But then the trouble came in once I did actually once I was actually given a name for God, that's where the trouble came in, because it takes a lot of maintenance to pursue him and to seek him and all that stuff. So, but then you come along and say, well, maybe it's like this. And I'm like, wait, yeah, but
So
I'm better.
I think that one of the traps that results in nihilism is to take a perspective that is too demanding. So I hear people saying, in the greater scheme of things, your life does not matter. But the problem is you don't live in the greater scheme of things. So you might as well just respond that in your life, the greater scheme of things do not matter, right? So in other words, by taking that perspective, you are opening yourself to unnecessarily to an abyss into nihilism. And the people who try to lure you into that are doing everyone a disfavor. And I think that's what happened in the culture with nihilism, is that we're taking on this materialist viewpoint. That's what modernism basically boils down to. And that is to take a stare into the abyss, taking this great scheme of things viewpoint, and it doesn't lead anywhere good.
Yeah, the individualist, objectivist, worldview.
You're triggering me now.
It puts you in the position of the neutral observer, right?
Well,
I'm just gonna do the thing that Paul is too nice to do, which is say, there are people waiting to join this chat. If you are not speaking at all, please consider leaving the room so that other people can join. Also, please turn on your video if at all possible, because that makes for a much better experience for everyone.
So for me, the greater scheme of things would be boiled down to me focusing on me trying to get to heaven. And that was just a nightmare. It can never do it. It can never be good enough for it. And so that's where a lot of the angst was coming from. Like, I could feel nihilism rush right back in once it became about me trying to be good enough so that I can get to this other place, when it's like, it's that greater scheme thing. What if I'm better off more focused at how I can be of service to others, right? Like, if I can be more focused on how I can be useful to others, then I don't have to worry about getting to a certain place or whatever. So I don't know. I'm just rambling, but I just wanted to share that. So if anybody out there is feeling like that, don't worry, you're not alone. I mean, that had a lot to do with my recent existentialism, was knowing damn well I ain't good enough to get there, and and then focusing on that. It's like, dude, yucky. Paul, do you ever deal with these types of things?
In terms of myself?
Yes.
Do you listen to my sermons?
Once in a while.
My sermons deal with this because, and again, now this is where Calvinism, I don't believe, is nihilism, because we very much have a belief in that we are saved apart from our works. And then, I mean, every single one of my sermons, you'll see misery, deliverance, gratitude, misery, deliverance, gratitude. And that addresses exactly what you're talking about. That you are free to serve your neighbor because, in fact, you are empowered to serve your neighbor by a God.
But in the end, it still doesn't matter.
Because serving your neighbor doesn't matter? Well,
because God is sovereign, and I make no decisions, and God decided everything.
Everyone's trying to tell me what I believe as a Calvinist, and it's not what I believe.
I want you to tell me what you believe as a Calvinist, and one of the things you ultimately say is Calvinists never actually act like they believe that stuff.
Exactly.
Which makes me wonder. Then what is it? Like, if your beliefs are not the reason you do what you do you actually believe it?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't believe what I do doesn't matter. I don't believe that. I do believe that what I do matters, and matters eternally, And Calvinists have always said that too. This idea that Calvinists believe in a blind, divine, pre-existential lottery. That's an attempt to try to make sense of Pauline language about election. And our election is part of Israel's election. I mean, the biblical idea of election begins with Israel. Christ means anointed one, elect. We're elect through him.
Okay, so why do you use this word double predestination, or do you?
It is a word that's used.
Look, if you don't want me to believe that you believe in even single predestination, then stop telling me you believe in double predestination.
Go ahead, Skylar.
I think how Calvinists at least be framed. It's also a response to Newtonian physics, where everything has that worldview had just been ratified, and they could kind of see it. And now that Newtonian physics was provable, well, God must line up with this, right? Therefore, where everything is, if we go back, it should all line up, and God must afflict that first domino. Now, do common nowadays Calvinists stop at Newtonian physics? No, their theology has moved forward. But if you see right where they were at the time and what they were responding to, predestination is a response to Newtonian physics. So there's a lot more going on there.
I disagree with that because, first of all, Newton came far after Calvin, if I'm not mistaken.
I get that, but he clarified what was being proven. They were saying empirical science, these things have cause and effect. But then Newton ratified. When Newton ratified it, the Calvinists were like, that's what we knew that. And
but the Enlightenment
exactly the story.
The Enlightenment was to a very large extent also a reaction to predestination. The idea that God's ways are unknowable and that whatever will happen. So the people who did the investigation of nature were trying to find out how can we understand nature in order to influence the future.
Okay. Well, a little bit of history with respect to all of this drama around this. Calvin, essentially, he's a second-generation reformer. He tries to re-articulate basically what had been standard Roman Catholic Augustinian ideas about election. And Calvin, in his Institutes, basically says, well, logically speaking, this is the implication. That doesn't really start to grip the conversation until later centuries where, like he said, in terms of it starts to say, okay, but then, and this whole thing starts rolling about this. And this is where, I mean, look at Tim Keller. He belongs to a denomination more conservative than myself. People throw this at him. He says, I prefer to just go back to what Paul has to say, because all of those tensions are in there. And like I always say, I mean, I never should have said the word Calvinist, because this then becomes an enormous distraction to everything. And everybody then wants to talk about, oh, don't you believe that so-and-so is damned through no fault of their own? My denomination has talked about this plenty over the years, and that's not the position we hold.
But, Paul, see, this is why I made my video, Heidelberg Catechism Exposed. Because it is very important what your theology is. It is very important what the basis of what your three forms of unity, which I still haven't gotten all the way through, tell you. Your theology matters, and it's absolutely like mind-boggling to me that as a Jew, I'm sitting here telling a Protestant that your theology matters. Not just what you do. It's not just about orthopraxy. It's also about orthodoxy.
It's like a steel man. I mean, it's to a degree, it's like, where is our language at now? If you go look at the cutting edge of any real group, of even the Calvinists, they're lined up kind of with where the scientific language is at. So you can look back and always cite the dummies that everybody can keep up with. But as someone who's going into the Orthodox Church, I read the Nicene Creed every morning when I wake up and every night when I go to bed. So,
Well,
and I sit and read the Old
early
Testament.
Christian theology is much better than later Christian theology.
Exactly. So
In
I just
fact,
sit
I
in the
think
Old Testament.
Jesus' theology is much better than Paul of Tarsus's theology.
No, they're the same. But they're the
So
same.
what you're saying is that the Shack had it right, because I just watched that last night and it fixed everything.
Tell us more, Chad.
Oh, there's Sally.
I've come all the way back to argue with Jacob.
Good.
I don't think that what anybody says about what they believe is worth a damn. People don't know. You just live your life. And then you notice, maybe you get really lucky and you might figure it out. But you don't get to, I don't know that you get to pick. I don't think that being egghead about it proves anything. So, like, stop it, I guess is the point. I don't know.
I would agree with that.
I'll even quote the Old Testament. God resists the proud, but gives grace to the humble. So, I mean,
Okay.
Sally's usually scary.
Look, Sally is making a very important point.
Yeah,
And in fact, it is, I would say, the Jewish point against Christianity, which is, yes, what you do matters more than what you think. 100% what you do matters more than what you think. But Christianity has a point. They're not wrong about everything.
Yeah.
What you believe, what you profess, has a real influence on how you act. Both of these things are true.
I don't think you know what you think that often.
That's why you need liturgy. That's why you need liturgy.
I mean, fair enough, but it's just there's this thing where you get to say what you are, and that matters over how things have played out. And I don't know that it does. I do think you can affect your trajectory, and I'm not saying that like you should just give in to circumstance. It's just being caught up about what people like you're trying to pin to the wall, and it really pisses me off because I don't think it's useful, and that's divisive. And it's what's I mean, it's just like it's a continually divisive thing because it's like fighting about the versions, and it's like it's not that some versions aren't obviously better. It's just I don't know. It's fractured.
It is definitely divisive. There's no question about it being divisive. But that is part of what we were talking about earlier, and Mark was talking about. I see that as being the core of the problem in our society right now, is too much fear of division and discussion and disagreement. And people are abusing that. And there's a reason I decided to come down all the way to the theological level, because I realized at the practical, like political, day-to-day level, the rot of postmodernism has gone down too deep. And so it does matter. It really does matter. And look, if you call yourself a Christian, then when Jesus says the first commandment is, hear God, hear Israel, God our Lord is one, right? There is a reason why that needs to be the first commandment, right? That there is a reason why it is the foundation of Judaism, and if you believe in Jesus, it is the foundation of Christianity as well. It matters.
Yes.
Being a monotheist matters.
Well, for me, one of the greatest gifts that I was given before I was ever captured by Christ or anything like that. So I burnt my life to the ground and got to a position where I didn't really have any other options, right? And so then the damn sponsor that I had said, let's take these steps. And then in the whole program, the AA program, the fundamental bottom of all of it is God could and would if he were sought. So it's like, go seek God, clean house and help others, clean house, help others, clean house, help others. That's it. Go seek God. We don't, it doesn't, like, giving it a name or having a name for it isn't like anywhere near the highest principles, but go seek him. And that to me has always been the most freeing thing. It was, like I said, it was only once I found a name for him where it became even more difficult, because now I'm starting to project my ideas onto God, whereas before it was just seek him and help others. And those things were like kind of like the same thing, I don't know. It's a weird thing. People are weirded out by it because they're like, "Oh, you can't do that because it's a good day, but then you got this and that." And
well, your relationship with women, when you found a wife instead of just seeking one, certainly got more complex.
Yes. So you could throw that one at me, and I'll say yes. That's true. But I still have to
seeking is about finding. It's not about always seeking.
Well, I still have to seek my wife every day.
Yes, that's true too. And you still have to seek God every day.
Yes, exactly. So, like, I can say, yes, Christ is my God, but it doesn't mean anything if I'm not seeking him.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think I upset her. I didn't do.
Yeah, you chased Sally away. She's so fragile. That just chased her away.
I'm sorry. By the way, anybody feel
no one around here is going to say Sally is fragile at all. So, wow. Why is it that the Trinity just keeps coming up? It's just amazing. It's just amazing.
We should just read Luke.
I plead guilty.
I want to read Luke with you, Jacob. I just am so interested because we've spoken about this more than once. But in Luke, it even has the answers because Christ does things without prayer that should require prayer and then gives thanks. He does both moves. He is man and God. And so,
okay,
but he's not just the image because he's not made. And I can answer those questions. The Nicene Creed
completely hijack Paul.
Well, I don't want to go totally, but I'm saying even when you go carefully read the Nicene Creed, he's unmade.
Channel, I have discussed all of this many times all over my channel. Mm-hmm. I think it is perfectly clear that from everything I have read in the entirety of
you didn't know Stephen and Paul had the same rabbi. You thought I was crazy in making that up.
Jesus was teaching Judaism. Paul was teaching pagan, polytheistic Satanism.
Wrong.
So
because I can read the book of Acts, I can just say no. Because the Jewish guy who tells them, hey, maybe don't make a move against the Christians yet, he's the one who marries
21 of Acts. I mean, we can have this discussion. I'm not going to hijack this discussion.
Okay, but I'm 100% putting myself in there because
you're welcome to come on my channel. You're welcome to come on my channel, and we will discuss it.
Okay, so Jacob's channel is
it's just me. It's
Navigating Pulpits.
FATURECHI.
Navigating Rabbits. You should rename your channel Navigating Rabbits.
I like Navigating Pulpits better. I thought that was a good kind of...
I'm surprised that you said that synagogues have pulpits. I'm just not a...
They call them pulpits, yeah. I mean, so Reform and conservative synagogues. So you have to understand, Reform Judaism patterned itself after Reform Christianity. Many of their original synagogues actually moved Saturday services to Sundays.
Really?
I'm not even joking. Yes, they brought in organs. They started dressing like Reform Judaism is Christianity for the Jewish masses. It was a Christianity that Jews could accept.
Wow, that process of what happened to that what Jews did with their religion in modernity fascinates. I mean, obviously, partly because I don't know how my father's line. So my mother's line were Frisians. I guess they became Catholics and then somehow, but they just took care of cows. My father's line, the Jewish line, I always wonder how they wound up with the Dutch Reformed. I mean, and so.
I'll be honest with you. A Reformed synagogue is far closer to a Protestant church than it is to a synagogue.
That's fascinating.
And yes, half of the Jews in the world will. Well, no, actually, half of the Jews in the United States, because thank God, Reform and conservative haven't made their way into Israel. But it started in Germany. It flourished in the United States. That's the only places where Reform and conservative Judaism really exist.
Huh.
Yeah. I would say it tracks the language very much, especially if you can see that, because Geist, words like that from German, it translates much more. Even Christ, when he says Auferstehung, today you will see the Son of Man lifted up, he quotes Daniel. In the German translation, it's actually just like beautifully rich and layered, because that means so much more. It's like a preserving sacrifice. Something is kept, something is lost, and something is picked up and taken with in one word. And so when you translate that down one more, it starts to just scatter.
I'm not sure I understand what you're saying.
Well, the limitations of theology will be where our thought and philosophy is. And so some people think philosophy hasn't moved, but they can't keep up with philosophy. Go read How to Be a Bat, or Thinking Like a Bat, or Seeing Like a Bat. Okay, Nagel is really smart. Nagel is a common philosopher. Like, he's talking about mind today. And you could use him. So the conversation isn't dead 1100. Like, it's fun. The new theologian in the Orthodox Church was in the year 1100. There's three theologians, and the new one is in the year 1100. It's like, I love these people. They just... They get it.
Okay, so I have to say,
the language needs to slowly move.
I agree.
Everybody wants to be at the cutting edge, so they keep falling off cliffs.
Language is definitely what affects it, and the fact that Reform and conservative moved to first German and English, I think, is a big reason why they've lost the Hebrew character. Plug for my discussion with Michael last night. But translation makes a huge difference. That's why religion in translation, I don't think, works very well.
Well, it's cultural. That's cultural cognitive grammar, right? That's one of Vervaeke's excellent points, is that cultural cognitive grammar matters, right? And that's why we need more people talking about what are the actual definitions, not the meanings. Meaning arises from definition and content. See Navigating Patterns, my YouTube channel, for more, where I'm dealing with cultural cognitive grammar and sense making, right? When we can't have these things really well understood, and when you think, for example, I was on Clubhouse last night and they were talking about the Theseus's ship philosophical thing, which is, look, it's a 4-year-old toy problem, right? It's, well, if you every year you replace one board of Theseus's ship, but you have a ritual that around Theseus's ship, at what point did it stop becoming his ship? And it's like, at the point at which you stopped being a materialist, you didn't have this problem anymore. So that solves it right there. It's like, just don't be a reductive physicalist, and you never have. And I actually pointed this out to them. I said, the whole, it's in the story. The point of the ship is that they are using it in a celebration every year, not that Theseus walked on those particular boards, which has no relevance to anything at all. And so once you re-enchant the world by adding in the non-material elements of reality, philosophical, quote, problems or contradictions like that vanish. They go away. You no longer have to solve them because they're not there anymore to be solved. And that's part of cultural cognitive grammar, is don't define reality as physical reductionism.
Can I point out that Mark and Eric both are wearing shirts that have really long slogans on them?
The shirt contains contents that some viewers may find disturbing. And Mark says, what does your search say, Mark?
Here, I'll get closer for you. How's that?
If things get any worse, I'll have to ask you to stop helping. Gosh.
I think that is not coincidence. I think that's actually kind of important.
Oh, why is it important, Jacob?
Because ideas matter, because slogans matter,
Well,
because our identities, how we dress ourselves, how we present ourselves, and what we say about ourselves.
I dress like a homeless bum, and I work with the homeless, and I make PB&J sandwiches, as Tim the Marylander would put it. So, like, I hardly dress up for church unless I'm asked to, because they know I want to be barefoot, and they'll let me in my sandals slip off and be barefoot in the church because they know that is what I prefer. But I'm the weirdo who lives in the mountains and have to drive an hour and a half to go to church. So
dressed.
So Paul, what are you putting on those shirts I bought you?
You need to wear your identity, Paul, loud and proud.
Wear it.
It's got to be out there for everybody to see, so that you can be your authentic,
how about
secret,
this?
sacred
To
self.
prove your point, I'm leaving the United Methodists because they're completely political, and I can see the two rift happening. They have the traditionalists who want to go back to the year like the Puritans, and then just be like, okay, let's move forward properly instead of doing everything randomly at an impulse. Let's just follow Scripture. They look like they're savages, and then you have the Liberation Methodist connection, which is liberation theology plus Robin DiAngelo. So it's like that 30-minute Robin DiAngelo video, that's the United Methodist Church. So it's like the church thing we wear, they want me to wear, they bought me the shirt because I want to buy one, is a bright red shirt that says, the church has left the building. And I'm like, church means ecclesia. It's a gathering. Wherever I'm gathered with people, that's where I do a homeless shelter. That's my church, because I do a gathering and I pray over the food, even if they don't want it. I still pray over their food. So, yeah, to your point, yes, it's a big deal. And my mom used to buy me big T-shirts, like do-it-yourself makeover kits, and it had a paper bag with holes in it and stuff. Like I used to wear shirts that were just mean to people offhandedly. And when I stopped wearing those, they definitely changed my whole drive.
Wow.
That's interesting. I wanted to go back to something that was sort of brought up earlier that weaves into what Sally was saying. I think, now I get to be the outsider here, so I can critique all this crazy evangelism and stuff from the outside, right? What I see, it's something that Jacob sort of pointed to, is when you leave out the bad stories of the Bible, what Sally would probably call great testimony, right? She kind of indicated, yeah, that's where the great testimony is. It's in the trauma that you get put through in the Old Testament. That's the result of believing in the God of the Old Testament, right? When you leave that out, you get happy, friendly Christians. Yay! We're so happy. Come join our churchy thing. And it's like, my life is kind of, not like that. Like, I can't relate to you people. You're too nice. Like, what are you talking about? Like, where is all this happiness coming from, right? Because they're not telling the whole story, right? Because this is that middle out thinking. See my video on navigating patterns, best YouTube channel ever, right? Middle out thinking. You're not starting at the beginning. You didn't start as a happy-go-lucky Christian. You went through something for sure. And that's the thing we're hearing at nights, or at least last week we were on BOM, was these traumas that people had as the result of their belief, or the result of their interaction with the church, or the result of their misunderstanding or whatever of the Bible at the time, right? You don't hear that with evangelism. All you hear is, come join us. We're all happy and friendly. And it's like, I don't know if I like that.
I wonder if the happy clappy came out of a lot of the Jesus movement stuff in the late 60s and 70s, because when I look at churches before that, I think it was a lot of people who were hippies and people who were having a lot of trauma and chaos in their life, and they found the church and they started settling down and getting married and having some order, and it was just a relief. And so then evangelism for a lot of evangelical churches sort of became a very happy thing. Come here and Jesus will make you happy like Jesus made me happy. And
I see the same wave coming right now, because we had the 60s before, like you said, the 70s and 80s. What were they catching? They were catching the people who had been burned by the 60s, a lot of them. And a lot of them wanted to return to stability, but all those bridges are gone now. So then the church they returned to actually has like a 20, 30-year gap in tradition. And that started that 60-year church life cycle where all the Protestant churches last 60 years. That's one of the impetuses for it. And I see that happening
people are also
now.
coming.
Sorry, Nick.
Oh, that's okay. I was going to say, and people are also coming out of world wars and stuff like that, and like a military, very disciplinary and hardcore stuff done sort of thing. So yeah, having an alternative that's a little bit more loosey goosey was probably restoring balance to the force, as it were.
Okay, Josh, I know you have things to say. Start speaking.
Now he's out. He's out. Well, and I think the 60s, to your point, Paul, like that was they didn't want conflict, and they found a way around conflict. Look, they believed B.F. Skinner, who was a great guy. Like he really changed a lot of things. But his one big thesis that everybody wants to believe, he could never prove because it's wrong, and we know why it's wrong, by the way. And he tried and tried and tried and tried and tried. It's not positive reinforcement only. Positive reinforcement only doesn't work with humans. B.F. Skinner mistakenly said that he put that hypothesis forth, but could never prove it. Every time he tried to prove it, it just fell apart instantly. Sun did it too. But they kept that in the church, right? It bled through from the 60s. I think you're right, because of that whole attitude.
That's
no conflict.
I never put Skinner in with that, but that's quite interesting.
No conflict. We can resolve conflict. We don't need any conflict. Without conflict, though, you have no intimacy. That's why it's the intimacy crisis precedes the meaning crisis.
I would even say Carl Rogers. Carl Rogers, what did he want you to do? Well, look at his religious life. When he was young, he wanted to be a what? Priest. He wanted to he was evangelical when he was young. He died an agnostic or atheist. We don't know. And it's like that energy stayed. And then I know a lot of people who quote Carl Rogers to me from the church, and I have to stop and be like, wait, you guys do know that he left the church openly and never I don't disagree with him, but he's not.
But good ideas aren't married to people.
Yeah, well, but that idea didn't. To Mark's point, I hate when I have to agree with Mark, but steel manning, really, truly, you have to have something to run away from and something to run towards. The cybernetic model that Peterson has made so easy and accessible. What does he talk about? He talks about a mouse. Well, if it goes to cheese, it goes to the cheese. But then if I waft in cats, the scent of a cat, that mouse gets to the cheese. You actually need these dual parameters. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of why I think grace the Protestants just need a new definition of grace. God is grace. Stop trying to reify, put grace in things. You can't, the whole way, what they're fighting against and protesting against is silly in and of itself. You can't imbue grace into something. So
you need more than grace.
Right? Yeah. I think it's God's grace. It's not ours to imbue. I can't be
you need peanut butter and jelly sandwiches to pass out.
Well,
lots of those. Lots.
You need more tools. And that's the thing that Catholicism and Orthodoxy give you, is more than just grace to solve all the problems, right? So you can have gratitude, right? You can have these other engagements. There's all this symbolism so that you don't have to sit there and profess things, right? You can just enact things, and it makes it a lot easier, I think, when you have more handles in more ways into the faith. There seems to be something to that.
Yeah. Or you might say there's saints that can show you many different paths to Christ. Jonathan Pajot talking about St. Christopher. He can't give alms. He can't fast. He can't abstain. He can't do prayers. He's Saint Christopher. All right, cool. Enough said.
It's Michael. Dude, what's up, guy?
That's Michael. Michael has a channel too. Why don't you say the name of your channel, Michael?
It's my name. Michael Sartori.
There you go.
So, yeah.
Oh, we lost Jacob. So
Hmm.
one came and one left. We have a light replacement going on here too. So that's cool.
I'm taping them all off because I gotta spray paint the ceiling.
All right. How are you doing, Michael?
I'm good. I just had a chat with Jacob last night, so that was my question about Bible translations sparked a whole thing. So
Really?
but yeah,
Who would
but
have
we
thought?
came to a good understanding because he liked my problem that I had, which was academic elites telling people that don't know Hebrew that they have no right to interpret the Bible, not Christian scholars. So
which is interesting for Protestants, because Protestantism was sort of founded on having people interpret the Bible and not receiving what the church told you the Bible means.
Yeah.
So
well, that's, I mean, I don't know if it's that big, but when you go into certain echo chambers, and I got into some of these, the Michael Heiser tribe, it's almost like a hierarchy of elitism based on, how many letters you have after your name. That's how important your theological arguments are, regardless of your actual relationship with God. And I say, no, I don't agree with that. So,
So everyone's always telling me I have to pay more attention to Michael Heiser, and I haven't, because there's not enough time to pay attention to everyone. So I don't know much about the Michael Heiser tribe.
I think his fiction books are the best ones. Huh. But, no, this is what I would say in a nutshell. The good thing Michael Heiser's doing is he's trying to bring, high-level academic scholarship to a more evangelical audience. Mm-hmm. And a lot of this is, liberal scholarship. And, I think he does a pretty good job of trying to discern with, what is helpful and what is nonsense. The problem is that the people one level down just then will grab any random liberal scholarship and go run with it. And, they're not, some of your theological presuppositions or, what you actually believe about God has to come before your academic ideas, I guess. So it's a little bit of a clash there, and I kind of got frustrated because I don't like the idea of people looking down on the regular good-hearted people in evangelical churches just because they have less sophisticated views about the Bible. And so my point to Jacob is that I think we should just translate the Bible into every language possible, give it to all the people, have everybody read it, and then whatever crazy stuff happens, God's in control of it. So that's my Calvinist background take on that. So
that's been working out really well.
Well, yeah, I would say we have to remember what Martin Luther thought. Martin Luther genuinely thought to a degree, hey, everybody's going to translate it and come to the same thing as me. But people also forget that Martin Luther, when he put his 99 Theses on the wall, they weren't written in common, they were written in Latin. So he's extremely studied, and then he goes, oh, when normal people read, he kind of missed that judgment a lot. And that's the repercussions we're dealing with.
Yeah, and I wouldn't classify people's understanding as sophisticated, right? I might classify their articulation as sophisticated, but I think sophistication should be wrapped up in practice, right? How well do you practice? What is the implementation that you're using, rather than relying on things like sophistication for articulation? Because I don't care how articulate you are. I care how nice you are. I said that I've done 3 talks with Petkow, with Chris Petkow, and I was kind of like, yeah, I don't care how you translate the Bible. I care how you care for me as a human being, right? I care about the intimacy. I don't care about your ability to explain to me why you're nice to me. That seems unimportant somehow to me.
In fact, if you have to justify all your grace or all of your works, then you're kind of lacking grace, because to forgive is a word that most people have never thought about, but it means to give before. So when you become a Christian, you've already decided you're going to betray me, and I forgive you. When you betray me, it doesn't shock me that much, right? Vervaeke freaked everybody out a couple of Q&As ago or whatever. I was like, saw this one coming, and that's why I've been reading his books. Everything he ever recommends to us, I'll sit and read. So now I have read his fictional book that blew open his mind or whatever. I've sat and read that book now for like months, and it's like, yeah, that was probably why if Vervaeke never had someone explain what the blasphemy to the Holy Spirit was and take them through Acts and be like, here's a couple that sold their belongings and lied to the church. But they also lied to God. They said they sold it for X amount, but they really sold it for this amount. He falls dead, and then the wife isn't there. She doesn't get blamed for his transgression. She has her own. Peter walks up and says, hey, how much did you sell the house for? And she goes, this much. And he goes, I'm sorry, we're already preparing your husband's grave, but I guess we're going to have to do 2 today. And then she comes over dead. Well,
so what book did Vervaeke talk? What fiction book did Vervaeke talk about?
Oh, Lord of Light. Yeah, it won the Hugo Award, and then whatever. It's a second one by him that won that. But it's amazingly. I don't want to go into it unless you would like, but it landed why Vervaeke has such a clear way. So that's what I want to talk to him. His Q&A is on right now, so I was thinking going over eventually. But that's what I want to ask him about, is like, okay, I've now read Lord of Light for 6 months straight. Like, I read the Bible and Lord of Light and books people recommend.
There's two books entitled Lord of Light. One by Catherine Levesque and the other by Roger Zelazny.
Yeah, Roger Zelazny. So Roger Zelazny had just won the Hugo Award. This is like his second or third novel, and he won a second one. So he just won like all the science fiction novel awards. This book is about a spacefaring colony way in the future that has all this technology to transfer consciousness into new bodies and to do whatever they want. And then they set up the Vedic structure from the Hindu gods. So the original people who landed on the colony are now Vishnu, Mara, all the different gods. And they have a Buddha. So you follow Buddha. And it's really, I could see why Vervaeke is where he's at when he talks about, he has mentioned this book numerous times.
Yeah.
So I sat and read it over and over, and I was like, oh, well, then when he talks about this rationalist movement, I've read all of his scientific papers also. It's like, oh, perfectly rational. In fact, it's airtight. It doesn't have Gödel's completeness theorem involved at all. Right. And Gödel's incompleteness, you have something coherent and complete. But if that's your goal, you're going to...
Closed system.
It's a closed system.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So, or if you have a small arena, then you can manage it, is how I've been using Vervaeke's to even talk about these things. But I think those ramifications have, like Jacob's point earlier, if that's the thing that blew Vervaeke's fundamentalist worldview and just shattered it, was reading that book, Lord of Light by Roger Zelazny, then, I've listened to that man talk for hundreds of hours. So, and I need to be careful, because that's yeah. But I'm with his goal, his cultural cognitive grammar. That's Vervaeke's goal that I'm behind 100%. Religion that's not a religion, not so much. Not with that one. You can see Mark and I in the Discord at the very beginning, just being like, hey. And then Struan is probably the smartest guy in that group. Yeah. Struan's just too smart. He's blown my mind many times where I'm just like,
Yeah.
Need to load.
Interesting. So Vervaeke's doing his Q&A right now, huh?
He is. Are you going to bomb?
Hey,
I guess
we can go over there.
I guess I could go over there.
That'd be awesome. Let's do it.
I'd have to stop. I'd have to stop this though.
What's that? I love you guys.
So.
It's always interesting. He's getting crazier and crazier in those Q&As. So
I just saw it coming. It doesn't bother me at all. He's just being more honest and not like
wow.
Yeah, Watson and Crick, like
close to
panspermia.
is that gap. I mean, come on. Like some of this stuff is so ridiculous.
Saying, like, everybody who's smart has these glitches. Like
object-oriented ontology. It's not going to have any of the problems of object programming. What are you, high? Like, where do you get that from? That's crazy talk. Crazy talk.
All right. Well, maybe it's a good time to land the plane. This has been wild.
Thanks, Paul.
So thank you all. Thank you all for watching, and thank you, Anselman and Rick, for keeping an eye on the comment section. So all right, maybe we'll shift over there.
Navigating patterns.
Navigating patterns. Paul. And the intimacy crisis on Android with the Bangs.
Yes. Oh, thank you.
Oh yeah.